Hello everyone. I'd like to thank each of you for your time today to come to the webinar. My name is Steve Testerman. I'm president of BrokerHunter.com, and I'll be your moderator for today's presentation. You're at the fourth part of a five-part series called Extreme Success, How to Land a Great Job and Advance to a Better One. And today's topic, part 4, is called the Extreme Success Program. Just a couple of notes, we will be having a Q&A at the end, so be sure to ask any questions using the chat pane, and we will try to get to all questions at the end of the formal presentation. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about today's presenter, Peter Weddle. Peter, we're very lucky to have him as a speaker. He's an HR consultant, a recruiter, a business CEO, an author, and a commentator. He's been a thought leader in HR-related areas for many years. And in fact, starting in 1991, he founded Job Bank USA, which was one of the largest employment service companies in the United States. And over the years, he's earned a reputation for pioneering strategic thought leadership and Internet strategies for state-of-the-art human resources management topics. He appears frequently in the media, including he's been on the Today Show, the McLaughlin Group, Bloomberg, and been quoted in the New York Times, the Washington Post, USA Today, and many other publications. In addition, Peter's authored or edited over 24 different books, including one of my favorites, which is the Career Fitness Workbook. And a lot of his topics and material comes from that in his Extreme series that he'll be discussing today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the session over to Mr. Peter Weddle.
Thank you, Steve. And as always, it's a pleasure to be here with you all and to have a chance to talk about extreme success. Let me just get the slides up here. Okay. What we're going to talk about today is how you can turn yourself into an asset employers will recognize, into a person of talent, and then ensure that they will compete to hire and then eventually to hang on to you, to really reposition yourself in the world of work as someone who can carry on from today into the very end of their working life with great success. Now, today we face a twofold challenge. The first is a change in the nature of the competition that the people who hire us, those employers, are facing. I call it the economic singularity. As I explained in session number 2 of this program, we've passed the point in the global marketplace where the companies that American companies compete against, the companies overseas, they now employ smarter labor. So our employers are no longer competing against companies with cheaper labor, but with labor that has state-of-the-art skills, state-of-the-art knowledge. And that shift means that we have to up our game to change the capabilities, the knowledge, the skills, the wisdom, the insight that we can bring to the workplace every single day. Because that's the only way that our employers are going to be able to compete. They have to be able to harness the intellectual capacity that only we can bring to the table. The second challenge is the changing nature of expertise in the workplace. Today, knowledge is advancing at an extraordinary pace. The amount of new information, the amount of new insights, the amount of new knowledge grows at an exponential rate. For example, in the year 2008, we humans created 4 terabytes. That's a 4 followed by 20 zeros worth of new knowledge. That was more new knowledge created in that 1 year than in the previous 5,000 years of human history. And again, what that means is that we have to bring more of that expertise to the table when we look for a job in the job market if we're in transition, and what we bring to the job when we're employed. We have to really be at the state of the art all the time, and that means that we have to continuously grow, we have to continuously develop our expertise if we want to stay competitive. So the bottom line, in a word, is that our challenge is change. Change is the new norm. That change is permanent. It is profound. And we ignore that change at our own peril. On the other hand, if we adapt, if we change ourselves, we set ourselves up for extreme success. And that's what this program is all about. So how do you adapt? Well, to achieve extreme success, you only have to take 5 steps. The first we covered in step 1, or in session 1 of this program, and that was to make sure that we really understood the dynamics, the huge changes percolating through both the job market and the workplace today. Those changes are here, and they're going to stay with us for the rest of our careers. In session 2, step 2, we had to reimagine ourselves. We had to see ourselves differently. We had to believe that we were people of talent, that we had an inherent capacity for excellence that we could demonstrate in the job market and use in the world of work. In step 3, we had to move from seeing ourselves as a person of talent to actually becoming one. We had to understand how to go from potential to reality, from intention to actuality. So we had to develop a new kind of strategy. We had to become a work in progress so that we were developing all of the time, both in our career field and in our inherent capacity for excellence, in our talent. So what are we going to cover in this program? In this program, we're going to cover a proactive way to sustain yourself as a person of talent. Once you see yourself as a person of talent and you become a person of talent, how do you stay that way? And the bottom line is you have to become an expert in career self-management. Now, I know that's not a very felicitous term, but it is an accurate description of the expertise you now have to acquire in the principles and the practices of being the captain of your career. You see, there's a body of knowledge and a set of skills that is every bit as rigorous, every bit as profound in career self-management as there is in your particular career field. So whether you're in financial services or human resources or sales and marketing, whatever field you're in, there's a body of knowledge and a set of skills that enable you to be an expert in that field. And now you have to have a separate body of knowledge, a separate set of skills in the area of career self-management. Why? Well, for 2 reasons. First, you can't get a job with a flabby career. If you're in transition, you can't compete successfully in today's extreme job market with a career that is out of shape. If you already have a job, it's unlikely that you'll be able to hang on to it if you have out-of-date skills, if you're obsolete. You may even end up suffering what I call career cardiac arrest, or what most of us call unemployment. So again, the goal here today is to learn how to become an expert in your career as well as in your profession. Now, why this new requirement? Well, there are 2 reasons. The first is that for the past 75 or 80 years, American colleges and universities have been graduating career idiot savants. You know, we are taught when we go to college a whole lot about a particular field of study, but in most cases we're taught absolutely nothing about how to develop a career in that field, how to sustain a career in that field. Why? Because the faculties at most American colleges and universities don't consider the body of knowledge and set of skills involved in career self-management to be rigorous enough to be included in the curriculum. Now compare that perspective to what's going on in China today. In China today, every college student as a requirement of graduation, takes a year-long course in the principles and practices of career self-management. So we have, for the past 75 years, been coming out of American colleges, and we knew a whole lot about our profession and absolutely nothing about how to make a career in it. But that didn't matter, because for the last 45 or 50 years, we've had employers manage our careers for us. We had a corporate career ladder. We could work for the gold watch. We could depend on the human resource department to make sure that we were moved along in our career, that we were developed, and that we were advanced to positions that were appropriate for our skill level. But beginning in the 1990s, American companies began to realize that they couldn't compete in the global marketplace and sustain the overhead costs of this very elaborate career management infrastructure. Of course, the poster child for that was General Electric, where from the minute you went into the company to the day you retired, they took care of everything for you. They showed you how to get from point A to point B, from point B to point C. Well, now General Electric and almost every other employer can no longer afford to do that. So the career ladder is gone. The gold watch is gone. We've been orphaned, and we now find ourselves having to manage our own careers, and we don't have that expertise. So how do you become an expert? How do you acquire that knowledge? Well, it's not by wishful thinking. It's not by serendipity or with pixie dust. This is a challenge that faces everyone. Whether you have 30 years of experience or 30 minutes, you need to acquire this expertise. And the first step in doing that is unlearning an old habit. Historically, the way that most of us have managed our careers, because we could rely on our employer, historically the way we've done that is to pay attention to our career only one day a year. We only paid attention to our careers on the one day when we got our annual performance appraisal. It was one and you're done. Well, today, that phrase, one and you're done, has taken on an ominous new meaning. Because if you only focus on your career one day a year, your career is done, and you will be subject to career cardiac arrest. So what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is to build something that's best described, in my view, as career fitness. I think that metaphor is particularly apt, because we all know two things about our physical fitness. We all know two things about our health. First, we are individually responsible for our own health. Nobody else can take care of our health for us. And second, we have to work on our health every single day, particularly as we get older. Well, the same is now true of your career. First, we are now individually responsible for our own careers, not our employer, not our boss, not our mentor, not our mothers and fathers. We are individually responsible for our careers. And second, we have to work on the health of our careers every single day. Now, most of us have assumed that as we got on in our careers, as we gained more experience and expertise, that we could pay attention less to our careers, that they would sort of have a certain kind of momentum and keep carrying us forward. But as with physical fitness, the older we get, the more attention we need to pay to our careers. So this is true, as I said, for people who have 30 years of experience as well as 30 minutes. And the key here is to be organized and methodical in your work. In other words, if you want to be a true expert in career self-management, you have to have a program that pulls together all of the various activities involved in giving your career the strength, the reach, the endurance to achieve success on a sustained basis. So let's talk about the career fitness system. You've all probably heard of the 7 habits of highly effective people. Well, as it turns out, there are 7 facets to a healthy career. And you have to work on all 7 facets all of the time. Let's talk about each of them briefly. The first is to pump up your career cardiovascular system. As we've been talking about for much of this series, the heart of your career is your professional knowledge and expertise. You have to be literally at the state of the art in your profession, craft, or trade on every single day. That's the only way that you can be seen as a person of talent in the job market and in the workplace. Second, you want to strengthen your career circulatory system. The circulatory system of your career is your network of contacts. Now, all of us do networking when we're in transition, but unfortunately, once we get a job, networking seems to move to second, third, or fourth priority. And in today's world of work, given that change is now the norm, we need to be networking all of the time. And we need to know how to do that networking in a smart way. Third, we have to develop all of our career's muscle groups. Now, historically, companies have tried to hire people who were unidimensional. They had very deep expertise in one particular area. Today, companies want people that are multidisciplinary. They want people to have that core expertise, that deep expertise, but they also want people to have ancillary skills that will expand the range of circumstances and situations in which they can apply their core area of expertise. For example, if you speak a second language, you are much more able to serve your employer because you can work in your core expertise in a number of different areas. Fourth, you want to increase your career's flexibility and range of motion. This is a particularly difficult facet for career self-management because most of us would like to believe that we're going to go through our job search, we're going to get hired, and then that unpleasant experience is behind us. But we have reached the end of the era of endings. We're now in the era of beginnings. The end of one job search is the beginning of the next. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, people entering the workplace today are going to go through 14 job changes by the age of 38. People older than 38 will go through probably not that many job changes, but they are likely to change jobs every 3 to 4 years. The half-life of your employment is now down to about 2 years. So you can either be the master of those changes or their victim. If you're determined to be the master, then you have to be as flexible and as willing to take on different forms of employment as possible. Some of your jobs, some of the new jobs that you take, may be just like the job you have now. Others may involve telecommuting. Still others may involve other kinds of work structures and situations. The more flexible you can be, the greater your range of acceptance for non-traditional work circumstances, the higher the probability that your career will stay healthy. Fifth, you want to work with winners. You know, a rising tide lifts all boats. When you work for an organization that is successful, when you work with peers and coworkers that are at the state of the art in their fields and doing peak work on the job, you are likely to see your own performance level rise. And it's that ever-rising level of performance that gives you career security, the ability always to be employed and always by an employer of your choice. Sixth, you want to pace yourself. This is, again, a particularly hard requirement for a lot of people today because we've been taught to believe that time is a key attribute that employers not only want but demand. If you have any doubt about that, the next time you're on vacation and lying on the beach, look left and look right. Half of the people that you see will be on their BlackBerries checking their email back in the office when they are theoretically on vacation. We have to relearn the art of leisure, not because it's fun or it's enjoyable, but because it's essential to peak performance. What employers need today isn't people who can do the job, it is people who will excel at the job. And a key component of excellence is creativity. innovation, originality. And you simply cannot be original, imaginative, innovative if you're dead tired, if your brain is running on fumes. So it's important that you give yourself the space and the time to recuperate so that you can perform at your peak on the job. And finally, the seventh facet of a healthy career is to stretch your soul. Everything that I've described to this point in the first 6 areas of a healthy career is all about what you can do for you, how you can enhance your talent in order to give yourself a more successful career. The last facet is all about taking that inherent gift with which you have been endowed, your capacity for excellence, and to use it for the good of other people, for a social service organization, for an environmental organization, for the community or hometown in which you live. It is to take your unique ability to do something that you love to do and do well, and to do it for the benefit of somebody else. So those 7 facets are the aspects of a healthy career. They have to work on them all of the time. So how can you do that? Well, in my view, career fitness is all about being proactive. First of all, as I've just described, you have to understand each of these 7 facets in great detail. You have to understand why they're important in today's extreme workplace and extreme job market. Then you have to know what to do in each of these areas. You know, how do you pump up your career cardiovascular system? How do you strengthen your career circulatory system? And I believe that there are 4 steps, I call them strides, 4 strides that you can take in each of those 7 areas. And the key is to be an expert in how you do each of those 4 strides, to know what to do, to know how best to do it, and here's what's unique to this program, to know how frequently to do them. You want to be able to do them frequently enough that you actually derive the benefit from having a strong career cardiovascular system or a career with lots of muscle groups. So if you were to do all 7 exercises and all 4 strides in each of those 7 exercises, so 28 different activities, according to the prescribed frequency that I think they need to be done, you would have to invest just 9% of your business day. So less than 10% of your 8-hour day just to do all of these things to keep your career with the strength, reach, and endurance so that you have the success that you deserve. Now, all of that is conceptual. At the end of the day, what you want to be able to do is to take the concept and apply it to you. So the way the program is structured is to first make sure that you understand what to do, how to do it, and how frequently, but then to tailor each of those strides, each of those steps to your particular circumstance, your particular situation, so that the program actually becomes something that you create specifically for where you are in your career. Let me give you some examples. Let's start with one of the strides in exercise 5, working with winners. Again, you want to work with winners because they help you raise the level of your own game. Now, as I mentioned, the half-life of your job is now down to 2 years. And a lot of times, people think grass is greener someplace else. In fact, the recent survey done by AFLAC of people who are currently employed discovered that 49%, almost 1 out of every 2 people currently employed, are planning to leave their current employer in the next year. Okay? So there are lots of people out there who think that the way that they're going to work with winners is to move to another organization. But here's the rub. In survey after survey, what we're learning today is that more than half of all new openings in the job market are being filled by internal candidates. In other words, there's lots of opportunity in your current employer that you need to make sure that you take care of if you're not in transition. And if you are in transition, you have to understand that you're not only competing with active job seekers who are unemployed, you are now competing with people who already have a job and are looking to get a better one. So how do you do that? What's your strategy? Well, the strategy is to be very specific about what you're looking for. As we talked about in session number 3, you want to have 3 goals all of the time. Goal number 1 is what can you do to improve your performance in your current job over the next 12 to 18 months. And there's a developmental goal to give you the additional skills and knowledge you need in order to be able to achieve that particular stride forward. But there's a second goal. It's your advancement goal. What job do you want to have in the next 3 to 5 years? And one of the keys to achieving that is to be a smart consumer. If you're going to look for a job on a job board, you have to realize that there are 100,000 job boards in the U.S. alone. So you've already discovered one of the elites in the financial services area with Broker Hunter, but there are lots and lots of other job boards out there. So how do you be a smart consumer of job boards? And I'll talk more about that in just a moment. The second thing that you have to do is be a smart applicant. And the key to being a smart applicant is not to simply apply for a job. And I'll talk more about that in just a second as well. So let's talk first about being a smart consumer. 100,000 job boards out there, and what you want to do is make sure that you maximize your range and penetration of all of those opportunities that they are posting. And I believe that the best way to do that is to follow the following formula. 3N plus 2GP equals 1GO. 3N stands for 3 niche sites. As I've mentioned, you've already found a great one in your particular profession, Broker Hunter in financial services. Now, if you've been a treasurer in the healthcare field, the second niche site that you might want to focus on is that industry. Focus on the healthcare industry. And the third niche site would be location. If you're living in Dallas, you might want to look for a niche site that specializes in employment in Dallas. So between those 3 sites, you're trying to, again, increase your range and penetration of the opportunities out there. 3.5 million openings posted on job boards right now. How can you touch as many as possible that's of interest to you? The second thing you want to do is also use 2 general purpose sites. Now, everybody's heard of Monster and Career Builder, and those are great sites. You can certainly use those. But I just want you to be aware that there are literally hundreds of other general purpose sites that you might use. So if you use 3 niche sites plus 2 general purpose sites, you're going to have 1 great opportunity. You're going to land 1 great opportunity as a result of your job search. So first, be a smart consumer of job boards. Make sure that you're using the best of the best. Second, look for a different kind of job board. You know, there are job boards that do nothing more than post jobs, and that's okay. But if you're looking to advance yourself in your profession, craft, or trade, if you're looking to be a career activist, somebody who is not content to just kind of let changes happen to them, but rather want to be in charge of those changes, you want to look for a job board that looks more like a homestead for your career or a careerstead. It not only has information and features and functionality that will help you find a job, but once you have a job, it has information and functionality and features that will help you manage your career, help you get the information you need to set good goals, help you acquire the wisdom and insight to deal with the problems that always come up in a career when you're facing a biased boss or an unproductive coworker, to help you deal with those kinds of issues so that your career can keep moving forward. So you want to be a savvy consumer of the job boards that are out there even when you are employed, so that you can avail yourself of those that will provide you the resources to keep your career moving forward. Finally, Unfortunately, the reality is that with 100,000 job boards out there, some of them will not treat you with the courtesy and respect you deserve. So I would like to suggest that you look for those which display this logo, which indicate that they are a member of the International Association of Employment Websites. Now, I want to be fully transparent here. I run this particular organization. But the reason that I'm suggesting that you look for its members, and there are over 60,000 sites out there that are members of the IAEWS, is because every member, like Broker Hunter, which is a member of this association, has affirmed its commitment to a code of ethics. And this code of ethics protects both job seekers and employers. It says to you as a job seeker that they are not going to abuse the information you provide. They're not going to take that information and sell it to marketing companies or do something else with it without your permission. So they're going to be upfront about what they do with any information that they acquire from you, and so forth and so on. The Code of Ethics is designed to ensure that you are treated with the dignity and respect that you deserve. So be a smart consumer of job boards in a job search. Be a smart consumer of job boards when you're advancing your career, and always make sure that you use job boards that will ensure that you are treated fairly and professionally. So how do you be a smart applicant? Well, as I mentioned a couple of slides ago, today it's no longer enough to simply apply for a job. Now, before I show you how to take this particular strategy, and the strategy is called the application two-step. Before I show you how to use this technique, first I want to give you a piece of advice, and that is, I know it's tempting when you're in transition to apply for any job where you're even just sort of quasi-qualified for the position so that you can perhaps get into the ring of consideration. But here's the rub. Today, most employers have downsized their recruiting team to the bare minimum. As a result, most recruiters are handling dozens, sometimes as many as 40 or 50 open requisitions each. And for each of those requisitions, sometimes they're seeing dozens, sometimes even hundreds of resumes. So the only people that they're going to look at are those that are a perfect fit. If you're not a perfect fit with the specifications for the job, the probability that you will get an interview is slim and none. Now, in the good old days, we could rely on recruiters to look for things like compensating skills and compensating experience because they had the time to make those kinds of judgments. Today, they don't. So if you're spending time applying for a position where you aren't a perfect fit, you're wasting time that you could be using looking for those jobs where you are a perfect fit and therefore really have a high probability of being considered. Okay, so how does the application two-step work? Well, step number one is a test. It's actually a test composed of two different steps. The step number one in the test is to prove to the employer that you care. How do you do that? By tailoring your resume. If you submit a generic resume for a position, that employer is going to consider you a generic candidate. And again, the probability of your being considered is slim and none. So the employer wants to know that you care enough about this position to have taken the time and made the effort to tailor your resume to that particular opening. The second part of the test is to see whether you paid attention in Mrs. Murphy's kindergarten class. What did Mrs. Murphy teach you? How to follow directions. If the job posting says attach your resume to an email message, don't embed it. If the job posting says embed it, don't attach it. If the job posting says send it by paper airplane, send it by paper airplane. Follow directions. But here's the rub. As I just indicated, there are dozens, sometimes hundreds of resumes accompanying yours on the way to this employer. So to make sure that your resume gets close enough to the top of the stack to be considered, you're going to take step two. Step two is all about acing the test, making sure that your resume gets considered by the recruiter that's going to fill that opening. And to do that, you've got to find one of two kinds of connections. You have to start networking to find a connection. The best kind of connection is somebody that you know in the employer's organization. If you can't find that kind of connection, then you want to do networking to find a different kind of connection. And that's where you are connected to someone because you both graduated from the same college or university, you're both members of the same professional association, your kids both play in the same soccer league. Whatever that affinity is, that's an affinity that you can leverage and ask that person that you're connected with in that way to hand carry your resume in the door and put it on the stack of resumes for the recruiter who's filling the position. Yes, that means that there are now 2 resumes in the pile. But what it also means is that the probability that your resume will get considered goes from very low numbers to very high numbers. Why? Because recruiters have a bias. They believe that the best candidates are those referred by their own coworkers. So it's incredibly important to take step 2 to ensure that your resume gets the consideration it deserves. Okay, so that's just an example of how the exercises work in the career fitness system. Let's take one more example. Exercise 2, strengthen your career circulatory system. As I mentioned, that's all about networking. And as I've just indicated, networking is critical to the way that you apply for a job as well as to the kind of branding that you do once you have a job. But here's the rub. Most of us have learned a bad habit over the past 10 years. As a result of the rise of social media sites, LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest and all the others, as a result of those sites, we've begun to believe that networking online is a contact sport. The more friends we have, the more connections we have, the more followers we have, the more we are networked. Well, that's not networking, that's not working. Because you see, networking is not a contact sport, it's a team sport. It's all about building relationships. Now, have any of you been in a relationship? I suspect you have. We all learn 2 things about relationships. First, they are incredibly hard work, and second, they take time. So what you want to do is practice the golden rule of networking all of the time. That golden rule is as simple as it is profound. It goes like this. In order to, you have to give in order to get. In other words, if you want people to be helpful to you, you have to first be helpful to them. If you want someone to help you in a job search, you have to have first helped them, either in a job search or with their job, by sharing your knowledge, your expertise, your wisdom. Where should you do that? You want to use your pals. First of all, you want to check the discussion forums at your professional society or trade association. Those are your peers. And the peers that are hanging out on the website of your professional society and trade association are folks who are really determined to be at their best in their profession, craft, or trade. So that's a great place to be doing networking. Discussion forums of your professional society and trade association. Second, you want to check any discussion forums, listservs, and chats that are operated by your alumni organizations, both undergraduate and graduate. Again, these are people with whom you share an affinity and who may be likely to be willing to help you in a job search. And finally, L stands for your local social service and civic organizations. A lot of the time and effort that you invest helping your community get better, those organizations also have a place on their sites now where you can interact with members and build relationships. But here's the key point. Networking is one of those rare words that says exactly what it means. It's network, not net sit back and have a pina colada. So it's really important that you see networking as an integral part of your business day. When you're in a job search and when you're employed. You want to invest, in my opinion, 2 sessions a week of 30 minutes each. You want to work on being in front of and contributing to your peers on a consistent basis so that you're building familiarity, which is one pillar of a relationship, and by sharing your wisdom and knowledge and expertise, you're building trust, which is the other pillar of an enduring relationship. Okay, so what we have talked about in this particular session is how to get from seeing yourself as a person of talent and then becoming a person of talent to sustaining yourself as a person of talent by becoming the captain of your career, by having the knowledge, the skills of career self-management, and by applying that knowledge and skills in an integrated methodological way so that you are covering all 7 facets of your career adequately with enough time, enough attention, and in the right way so that you have both your talent and your professional knowledge and skills at the state of the art. All right, as always, I'm just going to close by mentioning that, as Steve said at the outset, a lot of what I have covered today is found in the Career Fitness Workbook. But if you'd like to kind of get that information in a different way in a novel, there's A Multitude of Hope. If you'd like to better understand how people are becoming much more proactive about managing their careers, think about this. Just 3 years ago, in the year 2010, between February and April of that year, more Americans resigned from their jobs than were laid off. There's a growing tide of people out there who are absolutely determined to be the captains of their careers and ensure that they work with winners. And finally, a collection of my columns that I've written over the years for the Wall Street Journal and CNN are in the Success Matrix. All of those books are available at Amazon.com. And please, if you haven't already, sign up for my free newsletters at my website, which is Weddles.com. Okay, I'm going to turn the program now over to Charlene, and let's see if we have any questions.
Yes, Peter, we do. And I just wanted to say thank you again for all the great information that you've been sharing with us. The first question that we have comes from someone who is interested to know, what do Chinese schools include in their career management curriculum?
They include a range of diagnoses to help people, to help these students understand what I'm calling talent, to understand their motivated skills and abilities. So it begins with a fair amount of effort devoted to self-exploration, understanding who you are, what you love to do and do best. These are my words, but that's actually what they're doing. And then the second part of the program is specific practices and procedures, best practices and techniques for finding a job in the Chinese economy. And because there is not probably as much instability in China right now as there is in the U.S., how you sustain a career in that kind of environment, but also recognizing that there isn't as much opportunity for upward mobility as there is in this country. So how do you sustain an interest in your field? How do you keep forward momentum, keep yourself engaged, and so forth and so on? That's a very highly managed economy, so there's much less room for individual initiative. So there's not a lot of the kinds of things that I've suggested here in the program. But still, I mean, interestingly enough, I got an email today. There's an organization in China which wants to translate the Career Fitness Workbook into Mandarin so that it can be used in curricula over there. So I suspect that many of the fundamental concepts are the same, but the actual practices are unique to the Chinese economy.
Okay. Thank you for your insight on that, Peter. We have another question from Robert. He wants to know, how do you handle the overqualified perception?
Well, it's tough, no doubt about it. But part of that has to do with the jobs for which you are applying. As I indicated during the session, it's really important that you apply for jobs where you are a perfect fit with the requirements and responsibilities. So don't think that you're getting a competitive advantage. If the job posting says, you need 10 years and you've got 20, I'm not sure that makes you a more competitive person. What you want to do is to spend your time researching for positions. And trust me, with 3.5 million open jobs out there, there are a lot of positions for virtually any set of qualifications. So you want to find those that are actually looking for a person with your level of experience. That said, I'm aware that there are lots of employers out there that are unfortunately abusing job seekers because they take the easy way out, and instead of saying, we don't think that this is quite right in terms of your qualifications, or we don't think you're quite right in terms of your personality for our culture, in our litigious society they can't be 100% honest with you. So they take the easy way out and use the excuse that you're overqualified. In many cases, you might not be. But they're going to use that excuse because there's some other intervening variable that in their judgment makes you less than a perfect fit.
Thank you again, Peter. I appreciate your thoughts on that. We have a follow-up question from Julia to her original question related to China. Are there cultural differences to be aware of when it comes to networking for global professionals?
Well, Julia, first of all, I would have to admit I'm not an expert in that particular aspect of job search. So what you're getting is my top-of-the-head reaction. But I can tell you from the membership of the association I run, and these are job boards in China and the EU and South America as well as the US and Canada, that there are very, very significant cultural differences that have a real impact on everything from the information that can be requested by an employer. The privacy rules in the EU are much, much stricter than they are in the US, and to the way work is done. We have a long ways to go, unfortunately, before we have full equality for women in the workplace. In the U.S., they are still paid substantially less than men for the same level of contribution. But trust me, it is infinitely better here than it is in some other places around the world. So you'll see much higher gender bias in other areas of the world. And that will clearly have an impact on the direction and substance of your career over there.
Okay, thank you for expanding on that a little bit more, Peter. I've got kind of a long question here, and I'm going to do my best to translate it to you. This person says she's an active job seeker, and during the last 14 months, she was using many websites where she sent 3 types of resumes: standard for online agencies, target for professional websites, and locally specific directly to any other companies. The potential employers called her 3 times, but there were responses on her standard resume. However, no serious employers who really needed employees such as an accountant or a financial analyst. They saw that she had 3 years of working experience and invited her to take part of their financial pyramids. These pyramids were formed officially. They had legal addresses and permissions on this type of business action. The most interesting thing about these employers is that they didn't realize the level of higher education of people who really cannot find a job right after they receive their MBA diploma. She's commenting, I don't know what they were really thinking, but the fact that they don't value higher education is rather shocking to her. Do you have any thoughts on that whole experience?
Well, first of all, as we've talked about in this series, education isn't enough. I wish it were, but it's not. According to the Associated Press, 53.8% of recent college graduates are unemployed or underemployed. She used a term that I think may point to some of the dilemma that she described. She said she's been an active job seeker. And as I said in session 2, the first hurdle in being successful in this extreme environment is to stop buying into that box. Because a job seeker is a supplicant for work. And consciously or unconsciously, we put ourselves at a competitive disadvantage, both with other people in the job market and with employers. Now, I use the term person of talent, and I'm not arguing semantics here. I'm talking about the fundamental way that you view yourself. Because if you can change your perspective, if you understand what your talent is, and your talent is not your graduate degree, your talent is not your expertise in finance, your talent is something else. It's the ability to disaggregate complex tasks so they can be accomplished more easily. It's the ability to organize a diverse work group so that it can accomplish a task. It is the ability to communicate complex ideas so that everybody can understand it. Whatever it is, it's that particular aspect that enables you to be at your best in financial services. And that's what you should be focusing on in your resume. Now we're going to talk about that in the last session of this particular series next week on next Tuesday. But most resumes, talk about skills and talk about knowledge, but don't talk about talent and don't talk about wisdom. And what I believe catches the attention of employers today is that kind of differentiator, something that says, yes, here's a well-educated person. Yes, she has state-of-the-art skills and knowledge in professional services. But how is she going to apply those on the job in a way that enables her to excel? And that's her talent. And that really ought to be the central focus of her resume.
Okay, great. Thank you, Peter. Robert wants to know, if you haven't performed a specific role for a period of time, but felt comfortable that you still are current with the skill set, how can you convey that in an interview?
Well, first I think you have to give yourself a reality check and sit down with some people that you trust and to make sure that your assessment of the fact that your skills are currently still at the state of the art is correct. If that's true, if you can get that kind of candid assessment and the answer is yes, you're still at the state of the art, then I think you have to do more than just say that that's so. And that's why in the last session I talked about plugging the gaps in your resume. Those are self-inflicted wounds. There should never be a gap in a resume because gaps can be filled both with being in school to make sure that your skills and knowledge are brought up to the state of the art, or applied in volunteer positions, in unpaid positions where you get a chance to actually apply those skills on the job so that you can demonstrate to someone in the real world that what you're saying has credence and is believable. Unfortunately, there's a certain level of cynicism among hiring managers. Everybody who comes in and sits down in front of them in an interview says, I can do this job. I have all the skills and knowledge necessary to perform this job. And what they're looking for is proof. And proof can be provided by ongoing education. Even despite whatever degree you may have, you can always be adding skills and knowledge, or it can be demonstrated by being at work in a voluntary position, or as I said, the seventh facet of a healthy career is to apply your talent, your skill for the benefit of others. So in some sort of other civic organization where you can, at one and the same time, both give back to your community and demonstrate that your skills and knowledge are at the state of the art.
Great. Great information, Peter. Appreciate that. Ron has a question. What do you think about testimonials on a resume?
I think they're a waste of space. The time for testimonials is after you've been given a chance to interview and have a discussion with the hiring manager. And the door through which you have to get to that interview is a resume that is so compelling and so differentiated from everybody else in the job market that the hiring manager and the recruiter have no choice but to invite you in for an interview. And since there is very scarce geography, very scarce real estate on a 2-page resume, it's important that you front load as much of that argument of why you are better and different from everybody else out there on your resume. And you know, I don't think a testimonial, a short sentence or two from somebody else really adds much. Better for you to use that space with some very focused, very hard-hitting, very succinct statements of your talent, your skills, and knowledge.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. I have a sort of a two-part, it might even be three-part question here, and hopefully we can get through this.
Sounds like a political debate.
Well, Gene is asking, what about contacting the recruiters with one's resume? Sometimes dealing with recruiters, they tend to be more closed to a potential job person who has improved and changed. Most of the recruiters actually have less experience. And then sort of to follow up with that, she's curious about getting a team to work with your career. She's been reading your books and surrounding yourself with a team to work with your career fitness. And she also has a question as to what is the difference between career and talent set?
Let me work backwards.
Okay.
I believe when the question is what's the difference between career and talent set, the career set is the body of knowledge and set of skills involved in career self-management. So how do you, how do you set effective goals? How do you nurture your career expertise? How do you build up your career circulatory system, your network of contacts? How do you know which ancillary skills you should be acquiring, and how do you acquire those skills, and so forth and so on? All of that it has to do with careers. Talent, on the other hand, as I've described in this Q&A set, is really the intersection of your passion and practicality. It's what you love to do and do best. And as we discussed in session number 2, the way you target your talent is to look for the overlap between what engages you, what just sort of intrinsically serves as a magnet you're drawn to. It just feels right to be doing it. Engagement, relevancy. What makes sense to you? What is it that you really feel is important in your career? What would you like to be the legacy of your work? And then finally, choice. If you had no constraints, no financial needs or anything else, what would you pick to do? Somewhere in that Venn diagram where those 3 circles overlap, that's your talent. It's what you love to do and do best. And it is what you should be focusing on in a job search. There are a bazillion different financial service jobs out there. And let's say you're in the field of treasury, and you might look at 10 different treasury jobs, but only one of them would be a job where using your unique talent, maybe it's the ability to communicate effectively, where the requirements and responsibilities of the job make that a core feature. That talent, your ability to communicate, is a core feature of the job. When you can find a job that requires your talent to be applied, you maximize your possibility of excelling at your work, of performing at your peak. And that really ought to be the way that you make a decision about whether or not you're going to apply for a job. As to teams, I have a lot of regard for job clubs and for meetings where people can find support from others in transition. But I think they have to be done in moderation. Because the people that are likely to be most useful to you in terms of your networking are your employed peers. So it's important that you optimize your interaction with them. You want to attend the local chapter meetings of your professional society and trade association. You want to be face-to-face with people as often as you can in your field, even if it means springing for the money to go to the annual convention of your professional society or trade association. You want to make sure that you're engaged virtually in all the places that you can with your pals, as I described earlier, so that your team, if you will, are the people who are most likely to be able to help you identify a position that incorporates your talent in your particular career field. And I don't remember what the first question was. That's three parts.
Yes, I know it's a marathon answer there, Peter, and we sure appreciate it. Jean was asking contacting the recruiters with your resume, sometimes they tend to be a little less open to potential job people when they're really showing that they've improved their skill sets and have changed a lot. Some of the recruiters even have less experience than you, yet that's who you have to work with.
Well, that is the reality. Most recruiters are not experts in the field for which they recruit. That's just the reality. So think about the position that they're in. If they're recruiting for a CPA and they're not a CPA, they have to go to their customer, who is the hiring manager, and they have to say, okay, what are the requirements for this particular position? And if they deviate from those requirements, they are putting themselves at risk. They're ignoring the directions of their customer, the hiring manager. So they're oftentimes pretty locked into meeting the specified requirements. Now the tragedy is that a lot of hiring managers over-specify requirements for positions. They have forgotten what it's like to look for a job themselves. So for a job that might require a master's degree, they're asking for a PhD, or a job that might require 5 years of experience, they're now saying they want 15, and so forth and so on. But unfortunately, the way it works is that recruiter is going to, in more cases than not, adhere strictly to the stated requirements that they've been given by the hiring manager. That's why the application two-step is so important, because it's only through relationships that people begin to understand the true nature of your talent and the values and the character and the personality that you also bring to bear when you are an employee. And so it's the referral, that second step in the application two-step, which often enables you to get considered even when you aren't a perfect match. Now, the key here is to make sure that you do step one first. You do not want to avoid the HR department. That's the kiss of death. They don't have the power to hire you, but they do have the power to interfere with your being hired. So you want to play the game. You want to submit your resume the way they told you to submit it and make sure that it's in their applicant tracking system. But at the same time, you want to be working those relationships so that someone is willing to walk in the door and say to that recruiter, look, this person has everything but this one piece of, this one stated requirement, and I'm here to tell you that this person is extraordinarily talented, would be a great coworker, and you ought to consider them. And that employee referral gives the recruiter cover with the hiring manager. He or she can now go to the hiring manager and say, look, this person isn't a perfect fit, but our coworker, Jane over there, says this is a person we shouldn't pass on. And all of a sudden, you're now in the zone of consideration.
In the interest of time, let's, if anybody's got, I think, one more question, and we'll let Peter answer that, and then I know he's got some other things going on. So is any other questions? I'm
reading through the chat pane, Steve, and I think we're good. I think Peter has done a wonderful job answering all the questions. Okay.
Well, listen, Peter, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. Just want to remind everyone that this webinar has been recorded, and you will get a link so you can view that shortly. Lots of good information in that. And don't forget to about next Tuesday's webinar, which is the final part 5 of this series, the Extreme Success Record. So that'll be next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Keep an eye out for the email. It'll have links to the other sessions in case you missed those, and a registration link for you to sign up for next Tuesday. So that concludes the webinar for today. Look forward to having everybody back on next Tuesday. Have a great day, and thank you so much.